Now, how is all this going to be impacting our Indian markets? We have a team of research joining in with us to set you up for trade, tell you which are the important stocks to watch out for in today's trading session as well. First up, we have Vamakshi, as always, to tell us what are the important cues to watch out for in today's trading session. Good morning, Vamakshi.
Good morning, Vinny. Yesterday, of course, was a wobbly day for our own Indian markets. The Nifty slipped over 200 points. Excuse me, from the day's high and closed below the 100 DMA. Indian markets actually underperformed some of its Asian peers yesterday. Of course, you mentioned Japanese Nikkei. The ASX 200 also hit a record high yesterday. The broader markets, though, they slightly performed better as compared to the benchmark indices, with the mid-cap index declining by only 0.3% and the small-cap index, in fact, ending in the green, although barely in the green. Now, when we look at the US markets, though, they had a very strong run yesterday. The US CPI rose at 2.7%. This is slightly lower than the 2.8% rise that was largely estimated. And with that, the S&P 500 as well as the Nasdaq advanced to record highs yesterday. Now, today, in terms of cues, we'll be watching out for a lot of earnings reaction. Remember, we're at the fag end of the earnings season. Keep your eye out on JSPL, Apollo Hospitals, Oil India, some new age companies like Honasa, Nykaa, NSDL, which just listed recently, Cochin Shipyard, PI Industries, as well as Nazara Tech. These are some of the counters that will react to their numbers. As far as earnings today are concerned, we'll be keeping an eye out on Jubilant FoodWorks, IRCTC, BPCL, Hindustan Copper, Muthoot Finance, as well as United Spirits. These are just some of the counters that will be reporting numbers. Of course, there's a whole list out there. Dredging Corp and MIRC Electronics will also be in focus because the board will be considering fundraising plans. Lastly, keep an eye out on the primary market. Bluestone's IPO closes for subscription today. So far, it has been subscribed approximately 0.7 times, and today is the third and final day. The GIFT Nifty, as you were indicating, Minnie, looks like we're off to a great start.
Thank you so much for that, Vamakshi. An interesting setup coming in for our trade in today's market. But what are the important stocks that you should be keeping on your radar? We have Gaurav joining in with us for that. Good morning, Gaurav.
Well, yes, first let's talk about ONGC. A good set of numbers is what we saw here. Although revenue has declined almost by 9% on a sequential basis, profit increased almost by 24%. JSPL also came up with good set of numbers in terms of EBITDA per ton, because India's EBITDA per ton has improved. Specifically, when we talk about profit, that has also increased almost by 12% on a year-on-year basis. Apollo Hospital, here also we saw good set of numbers. Revenue increased by 15%, while profit increased almost by 39% on a year-on-year basis. Now it stands at around 441 crores. Nykaa also reported good set of numbers, because when we look at net profit, that increased almost by 80% on a year-on-year basis. Let's move on to NHPC. When it comes to revenue, that increased almost by 19%, while profit increased just by 4% on a year-on-year basis. So a muted side is what we can say in terms of net profit. But on the other hand, let's also talk about NSDL. Here also we saw mixed set of numbers. Revenue declined almost by 14%, while net profit actually increased almost by 8% on a sequential basis, and this was because of 15% jump in the other income segment. Suzlon came up with a little bit of good set of numbers, because net profit there increased almost by 7% on a year-on-year basis. While let's also talk about Cochin Shipyard. Here also we saw some kind of good set of numbers, because net profit increased by 8%, and this was actually also higher than the street's expectation. Let's also watch out for Nazara Tech. Now, two news flows here. First is that when it comes to profit, it has almost doubled. Now it stands at around 51 crores versus what it was at 23 crores just a year ago. And at the same time, board has now approved stock split in the ratio of 1:2, and they have also approved bonus issue in the ratio of 1:1. So definitely a stock to track today. And let's also talk about Paytm. Now, big news is coming up here. Now, RBI has given in principle authorization to operate as an online payment aggregator to Paytm payment. Now, let's not forget that this was banned in November 2022. So after 3 years, this relief is coming, and that is the reason sentimentally positive news for Paytm. And lastly, let's also focus on Translate Lighting, because company has now secured a fresh order worth 700 crores. So definitely all these stocks are going to be on our radar today.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Gaurav. And in terms of the final update that we have in Power Prep today, we have Mangalam joining with us to tell us which are the important cues that we should be keeping an eye out on in the world of FNO. Good morning, Mangalam.
Good morning. So if you look at the way the Nifty moved on Monday and the first half of yesterday, it told you that yes, the market does have a floor, but the second half of yesterday told you that the market has a ceiling as well. So we have Nifty, the Nifty Bank and the mid-cap index, all of them selling off sharply in the second half of trade in what was a volatile session where, dips were bought, but as vociferously all the up moves were sold as well. Yesterday's range tells you a near-term range that the street would be working with for the market. 24,703, the Nifty's high, is extremely crucial to cross for the bulls to have hope of another up move. And at the lower level was 24,465. The Nifty closed around those levels itself. And the GIFT Nifty comes up for you. That's indicating a start which is 61 points in the green. So immediately yesterday's high comes into picture. The FIS sold about 3,400 crores in the cash market. DIS bought about 3,500 crores. No change in the trend out there. But the FIIs, they continue to sell in index futures. In fact, it was on Monday where they, unwound some short positions, added some long positions. But yesterday they unwound all of that as well, added 4,800 short contracts. So if you look at the net contracts of, the FIIs, on August 8, it was minus 1.83. Then because of the up move that we saw on Monday, they unwound some of those shorts. It became minus 1.79. But now back to where it was, square one, 1.85 lakh net short contracts is what FIIs are in index futures, with just 8% long exposure, which is the lowest that we've seen in a very long time. And yesterday, the FIIs also sold index calls and unwound short index puts, telling you that they were fearing that there could be, some further downside on the market and upsides may be faced with some ceiling. Remember, the put call ratio, which bounced from 0.6 all the way up to 1.03, is now back to 0.8. And we saw call writers active at 24,700 and 24,500. Put writers who wrote options at 24,400 and 24,500 had to unwind their positions as the market fell in the second half. The 100 EMA of the Nifty, 24,530, is extremely crucial. So that's something we'll watch out for on the way up. And finally, a couple of stocks. Alchem saw some long positions being added. Astral saw some short positions being added post numbers decline. And Titagar, that stock saw a lot of open interest activity, entered F&O ban today.
Okay, Mangalam, thank you so much for that. But